Africa is still the world's greatest reserve of biodiversity, with many of the planet's most awe-inspiring natural habitats. The tropical forests, the Great Lakes, the basins of the great rivers, the immense valleys, the savannas, the deserts. Extraordinary ecosystems that are home to some of the most emblematic species on planet Earth and a quarter of the world's species of mammal. Until recently, the continent was the location for countless film and television documentaries that explored the living conditions and behavior of all these animals in detail. In many cases, the cameras were able to penetrate remote and inaccessible areas to reveal the secret life of wild animals. But today, not a single corner has been left unconquered or unaffected by human activity. The population of almost 1 billion inhabitants doubles every 20 years, exerting enormous pressure on wildlife as competition for land, fresh water, and food increases. Africa has 1,200 protected areas, covering 2 million square kilometers, 9% of the continent's surface area. These tiny islands of wilderness are under ever greater pressure from development, which threatens to reduce them even further. Outside the reserves, large mammal populations are plummeting, victims of poaching or simply unregulated hunting for food. But most of all, the expansion of agricultural areas and human settlements, a process that has reduced wild habitats drastically. During the 20th century, Africa was a killing ground for many species due to unregulated hunting both by locals and Americans and Europeans on safari. Nothing was done to stop the frenzied race to gun down any animal and take home its horns, teeth, skin or head as a trophy. Today, big game hunting is a strictly controlled exclusive activity regulated by governments, which only allow a limited number of animals to be killed to maintain the right balance between different species on reserves. But these controls have been imposed too late, after years of devastation. Mankind is the principal rival, enemy, and danger to all other species. The apex predator of Africa, threatening the very existence of the great carnivores of the animal kingdom, the lion, the leopard, and the cheetah, which are trapped in a desperate fight for survival. The big cats survive under the shadow of this threat. Their reign over the African wilderness is almost over, and their future looks bleak. Is this the end of the big cats? The populations of large carnivores in Africa have declined alarmingly over recent decades. The relentless destruction of wilderness areas, the effects of poaching, and the hunting practices of farmers and herdsmen all increase the likelihood that lions, leopards, and cheetahs will soon disappear from most of their natural habitats to survive only within the confines of public and private reserves as part of controlled breeding programs that supply the tourist industry. This has set alarm bells ringing for naturalists across the world who have set up urgent campaigns.
You need the governments of all the other countries to wake up and quickly, preserve some land so that the wildcats can still forage in there. And then, start settling down. But you will have to do that. Otherwise, just open free roam? No, none. It will, maybe 10 years, then it will be nothing left.
If population growth continues in the world over the long run, there won't be space left for large predators, I think. If we as a human species continue to reproduce at the rate we are doing, we will not be able to save enough areas for wildlife. That is the sad reality.
The reality of it is that if we don't do something now, we are going to lose them.
One of the species that has suffered most persecution is the cheetah. At the beginning of the last century, there were more than 100,000 cheetahs spread over 44 countries in Africa and Asia. Today, only around 10,000 are estimated to survive in a score of African countries. Outside Africa, only 100 survive in the wild in Iran. Africa is the true home of the cheetah, especially Namibia, which has the largest cheetah population in the world, a quarter of the total African population. Some are fortunate to live in natural parks, but the great majority struggle to survive in hiding, doing their best to remain unnoticed inside ranches dedicated to rearing livestock. Believing them to represent a threat to their livestock operations, during the 80s and 90s, Namibian farmers killed more than half the cheetah population, leaving the species on the verge of extinction. The swift response of conservation organizations succeeded in putting an end to the slaughter and began to rebuild cheetah populations within the country. Elsewhere, however, the response came too late and cheetahs have disappeared completely. The cheetah, the fastest animal on the planet, a genetic anomaly that holds a unique place among the big cats, is condemned to a desperate race for survival. Cheetahs are the big cats that face the most relentless persecution, not because they are the most dangerous or aggressive, but because their predatory behavior makes them practically hated. Cheetahs will hunt at any time. While lions or leopards have predictable hunting habits, cheetahs are far more active and anarchic. Lions and leopards have larger stomachs than cheetahs and tend to catch their prey and then spend 2 or 3 days eating it, satisfying their hunger for a time. In contrast, cheetahs eat far less at one sitting. They prefer fresh meat and so hunt more often than other large predators. According to popular belief, when it makes a kill, a cheetah drinks the blood of its prey, takes a few bites, and abandons the remains, going directly to hunt another. This makes it an especially frustrating killer, hated by ranchers. Given the chance to hunt easy prey, a cheetah will often kill one animal after another. Among farmers, its reputation could not be worse.
They do kill more often. They tend to also move through areas instead of just staying in one area for any length of time. They obviously do damage. They can do damage, like, for example, jump into an area or climb into a kraal and kill more than one. They can kill 40 goats at a time. So they do, but the fear element, that's the big difference here. The fear element between the fear of the human has for the cheetah is less. because he's a lightweight, if you want to put it that way. Obviously, he can hurt you, but generally speaking, they're a little bit more cowardly. They would run off, and a human is not that afraid of them. So if I were to look at human-wildlife conflict mitigation, ways of protecting livestock and getting people to change their mindset, it's easier for the cheetah, a little less easy but more difficult leopard, very difficult for hyena and lion.
The cheetah lacks the strength of the lion, the lethal agility of the leopard, or the stamina and iron jaws of the hyena, and it will rarely attack a human unless it is attacked first. A troublesome pest reputed to be a serial killer, but not particularly feared. All this makes the cheetah an easy target for irate farmers.
Cheetah, I think, are hugely persecuted by farmers just because of their natural behavior. They very often hunt a large number of prey species in a very small amount of time. They tend naturally not to finish their food. They like to eat their meat fresh. They fill their stomachs up as quickly as they can, and then they will leave a carcass. And so to a farmer who's losing his livestock, he's seeing a huge amount of wastage.
Many farmers have no qualms about hunting cheetahs, poisoning them, or shooting them. Conservation organizations like AfriCat have mobilized to stop the killing.
And here we have some terrible traps. I mean, this is the classic gin trap. Whether it's a small one for a jackal or a big one for maybe a leopard and a lions or even bigger, is you basically tie it to a big tree or wherever you can anchor it. You set it like this, close to the meat. So there is, it's closed, so you set it, you open it up next to the meat. And when the animal actually comes to eat this meat, they tramp in it and they get caught. The biggest problem is, like for instance, this cheetah, the toe was cut off. So the toe came off and it survived, but it actually died of hunger long term. It even healed because he couldn't catch food so well. This one, you want to see, this is a very typical one, handmade. You connect it with a mousetrap, simple mousetrap, to a string, the meat. You put a shotgun bullet in there. The animal pulls the meat and it sets it off, and the shotgun bullet goes out and blows the animal and sometimes misses him and also wounds him, and now you've got again an aggressive animal. Well, yeah, this is
The AfriCat Foundation, one of the best established conservation groups in Namibia, runs a small clinic and lab where wounded animals can be treated.
Thing here, we have a health check where the teeth and the general health of the animals in captivity are done here. This belongs to the vets that help AfriCat. This is where they will basically come and try and deal with an emergency, like a broken leg or an emergency, or the general health check is done in this little clinic. So it's a very small clinic, it's a very basic clinic, it's got the basic stuff, it's a clean place, it's where vets can really work. Most of this radio collaring is done pretty much in the bush. The animal is darted very simply, quickly, no deep dark drugs that will keep them sleeping forever, so that you can get these collars on. Collars are obviously very expensive, some more than others. Cell phone collars, satellite collars, much more expensive.
A significant proportion of the budget of these organizations is spent on radio collars. Not only are they used to monitor the rescued animals' movements, they also help to avoid further conflict with farmers, who can identify the cheetah as a protected animal. The practice of fitting problematic animals, especially large predators with collars, is spreading to public and private reserves all over the continent. The collar is a monitoring device and also an effective means for biologists to identify individuals. Until recently, the collars were fitted with a simple VHF transmitter, which made it possible to pick up a signal within a radius of 5 kilometers. Today they may incorporate satellite GPS, so the animal's whereabouts can be tracked by computer. They are not cheap, Each costs in the region of $4,000.
So basically, to start at the very beginning with the collar, that's the type of collar we're looking at with that program. And they have what is called a VHF unit, which you use to localize the animal in the field, where you take out an antenna and a receiver to be able to find that animal on the ground. On the back side, you have the GPS unit. So every collar has this GPS unit, which in a preset schedule communicates with the satellites. For us, we do that on a daily basis, so that we can locate pretty much every released animal on any given day. That we can follow them closely to see, do they go into hostile farmland, do they stay on nature reserves, what precisely do they do, as you said, monitoring their activity as good as we can. And most of the downloads are here in Namibia, where that animal is. And then you'll see the whole path that that animal covered since we've released it. And that's one of the fantastic things about the collars, that you would find it very hard to follow that animal on the ground to document that type of behavior, whereas the collar gives you those data pretty much automatically. That's the area around just north of Sossusvlei, the Namib Desert, red sand dunes, and here would be the Naukluft Mountains on the western side, on the eastern side, sorry. And as you zoom in to the actual area it's using, you have all these red dots, which are the individual locations of the animal. You have the red lines connecting it to see what path has it actually moved, which direction is it taking at the moment. Very nice is that it shows you in very much detail into what type of habitat do they actually go. For example, here you can see that the red dots are right in the sand dunes, which seems a bit untypical for a cheetah. But the collars have shown that cheetahs regularly do that. They are well able to use true desert environments as long as there's prey and water for them.
Surprisingly, the satellite shows that the cheetah has entered the Naukluft Park, an arid region that makes a demanding habitat for a predator, but where it's been able to settle thanks to the absence of competition. A second cheetah has been released close to the first to find out whether this case can be replicated. In order to track it via satellite, the second cheetah's radio collar must be changed for a GPS collar. Matt and Kate are the biologists in charge of combing the area to find the animal and change her collar.
I mean, cheetahs can walk anywhere from 10 kilometers a day to sometimes they'll walk almost 100 kilometers. It all depends on how comfortable they are in the area, if there's water, if there's a good food source, if there's game herds for them to follow.
Life here is never easy, not even for the birds, which gather in a huge communal nest in a lone tree. Kate suspects that we'll find the cheetah under the shade of the last tree before the dunes.
We think possibly maybe she's made a kill and she's keeping it in the bush, because we've actually seen cheetahs will take a carcass into a bush, kick dirt over top of it, and actually feed off of it for a couple of days if it's a very big meal. So as long as she's not chased off of her carcass, she'll stay on it for a couple of days and eat everything until it's all gone. So possibly that's why she's here. Otherwise, maybe she just really likes this tree.
Okay, let's go to see it.
Yeah. With 3 cups, 1 for harvest that down. So actually if we go this side, we'll have a little bit of a better view.
We don't want to scare it, because then when we come out with Rudy,
Yeah.
he's not here, then we have to
Okay.
scare it.
At last we find her, in the shade of a large acacia. She seems relaxed. Our presence does not bother her. She has no idea that within half an hour, the Nangus vets will arrive to fire a dart into her, immobilize her, and change her collar for one with GPS. Rudy van Voren, Director General of Nangus, will shoot the dart, which must deliver a correct dose of the drug to avoid unwanted side effects.
We're going to immobilize her, and the previous time that I immobilized this cheetah, the dose wasn't high enough. I underestimated her weight, so this time I'm going to give a little bit higher dose, because we have only one shot. If we miss, we have trouble, so we can't miss today. Great. That's great. Okay, perfect. Absolutely perfect.
After being hit by the dart, the cheetah begins to feel the effects. Rudy and Kate wait for a few minutes to ensure that the animal is completely immobilized, so they can safely approach her and replace the old collar with a new one. From now on, her every movement will be tracked by satellite and logged onto the computer.
Eat, mommy. Shoot. Where's your toys?
Just for...
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
Zag je willen? Yeah, I've got it.
Both brown and all that.
They look very similar.
Just do it then, I guess. See, I know how. Is it? Yeah. Oh, yeah, you got it.
And Kate and I just had to herd.
Once the GPS collar is fitted, it's time to wake her up. Dr. Van Voren administers another injection, but this time to bring her round.
Now you got the muscle.
If an animal has kidney disease or liver disease, you have buildup of the drugs. So you must be careful.
The stunned cheetah, her eyes glazed, is a pitiful sight. The effects of the drugs will gradually wear off, but there's always a concern that the tranquilizer could have adverse effects, as has occurred with other cheetahs, some of which have even died due to unexpected negative reactions. The biologists stay close by to make sure all is well. Seeing her like this, we're reminded of her vulnerability. Cheetahs are wild animals with extraordinary physical capacities, but this is no defense against the threat we pose to them. 30 years ago, the savannah was a haven for wildlife, ruled by the big cats. Some cheetahs have been reintroduced, but it's too soon to say whether this has been a success. Sooner or later, urban settlements will cover this area. It will mean the end of the big cats in this tiny corner of Africa. Despite the myths and legends that paint the cheetah as a serial killer of sheep, goats and cows, it is far more docile and gentle than the leopard or the lion. This cheetah is habituated by the presence of humans. It purrs loudly and rubs itself as a sign of its affection and trust. If there is one big cat that can really behave like a domestic cat or a dog, it is the cheetah. But allowing it to become tame may not be in its best interests. Although they adapt well to captivity, they need to live and hunt in freedom if they're to keep their animal instincts and their personality alive.
I would say cheetahs are cowards. They're very gentle, they have the personalities of dogs, and that counts against them in every situation because people will domesticate them, they become a beautiful pet, you take them out of the wild, they will never be able to go back. And also they accept captivity. Give them 2 to 3 weeks, they immediately snap, okay, it's fine in here, it's almost like a 5-star hotel, I get food and I'm in captivity, I don't have predators. Well, you don't want that from cats.
They can be tamed and domesticated, but a wild animal's behavior is never entirely predictable, even to someone who has cared for it since it was young and is able to read its facial expression and posture. Any action, an unexpected caress or playful blow, can be interpreted in a way that we would never have expected. All felines, big or small, retain the distinctive traits of wild animals. The caracal is a feline that grows to between 60 and 90 centimeters in length and lives in savannas and arid regions of Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and Asia. It is easily distinguished by its tufted black ears and its constant state of alertness and mobility. It is a spectacularly successful hunter of birds, hares, and other rodents, using its exceptional agility to catch its prey. It is probably the wild cat that most resembles a domestic one. In fact, in antiquity, Egyptians and Persians trained caracals to hunt small game, but it never lost its taste for freedom. The caracal has also been the victim of intense persecution, and it's more and more common to find them in sanctuaries or reserves, where they're protected from being shot or poisoned. There is no trait more characteristic of felines than the desire for freedom, and they can be very aggressive in the pursuit of it. Among the big cats, lions' behavior is the easiest to interpret. If they're irritated, they retreat, squatting on their haunches in an awkward position. Their tail begins to swish, their ears are pulled back, and their intense gaze warns of imminent danger. In these circumstances, you're advised to make a quick exit. Leopards are more unpredictable, but a prolonged stare is always a sign of danger. You should never turn your back on it, never stand underneath it, never approach it, instead letting it approach you, and never enter its territory. If you do any of these things, you're putting yourself in danger. A leopard may attack without warning, especially if it feels uncomfortable or stressed. In contrast, a cheetah's body language is clearer and easier to understand. If it avoids looking at you directly and appears to ignore you, it is at its most relaxed. If it also produces a continuous purring sound, it feels perfectly comfortable. When it gets annoyed, the fur on the back of its neck stands on end, and it will squat on its haunches with its forelegs extended, showing its teeth and snorting as a warning. Felines are particularly sensitive to the emotions of anyone approaching them. If you're calm and approach a cheetah with a relaxed, friendly attitude, even talking to it, it will respond positively. If you appear nervous, it will react aggressively or in fear. A cheetah can be just as dangerous in captivity when it's become used to contact with humans, even if it's been treated kindly and never shows signs of aggression. Even at play, it can do a lot of damage with its sharp claws.
Cheetahs who have non-retractable claws, even if they just want to play with you in direct contact, a wrong move and the non-retractable claws will do injury. So it's always a very thin line maintaining large predators in captivity. I do see that there is a necessity to have certain ambassador animals in captivity if they are very well managed. If there is security measures in place, if there's protocols in place, and if there is experience there to deal with those animals.
The Okonjima Reserve, more than 20,000 hectares of wilderness reclaimed from livestock farming. This is the headquarters of the AfriCat Foundation, which has rescued more than 1,000 carnivores since 1993, among them 700 cheetahs. Andre Rousseau takes us to visit the cheetahs of Okonjima.
She came she was an orphan. Her mother was shot on a farm, and she came with her brother when they were babies. So they were raised by people, so they have no fear of people whatsoever. The only thing you break is that she doesn't associate people with food. So even she doesn't see people as a threat, but she also doesn't see them as a source of food. Because otherwise, she still saw people as a source of food. If you come here, she'll come up to you looking for food. So this is just, she allows you to get close to her, but she doesn't come and look for food, which is a nice thing. She can never relax. She always needs to be alert of what's going around. If he kills a cheetah, it's more food for him. So he's the
To our
apex predator
surprise,
on top.
the cheetah ignores us completely. Whenever we get closer, it moves further away, asserting its right to be alone. We decide to look for more cheetahs.
No cheetah. All baboons.
The baboons don't take long to appear. This is a large troop that moves en masse to protect itself from big cat attacks. The leopards and cheetahs in the vicinity are certainly aware of them, following at a short distance and waiting for one member of the family to drop its guard or become distracted, and so become an easy target. Only 200 meters away, we find 3 cheetahs, acting as nonchalantly as possible. There are 2 males and 1 female. Cheetahs often join forces to hunt. They don't seem happy to see us, and they soon leave. We may have spoiled their chances of catching a baboon. The dominant male has warned his companions that with these humans in the way, they stand a better chance elsewhere. We follow them for a couple of hours and watch as they explore the territory in search of signs of prey. From time to time, they spread out and regroup, checking each other's position and the distance separating them, always on the lookout, sniffing and probing vegetation and tracks, looking for a fresh trail. Suddenly, we lose sight of all 3. A few minutes later, they appear at the top of a small hill from where they can scan the surrounding area. Once again, the dominant male makes the first move, leading the others to continue the search. They make their way to a waterhole, but there is no prey here either. The recent rains mean that zebras and gazelles come here to drink less often. Not far away are a few ducks that would make a great meal. But it's time for a siesta. With a few sidelong glances at the ducks, perhaps one will be foolish enough to get a little closer. The cheetahs need to watch their own backs too. A leopard perfectly camouflaged among the grass surveys the scene, waiting to see whose attention wanders first. The leopard will not tolerate competition from the cheetahs, and sooner or later will try to eliminate them. Big cats are also protected by conservation societies like the Nangus Foundation, which has a wildlife sanctuary in central Namibia. The team at Nangus includes biologists and volunteers from all over the world, working for the survival of orphaned or wounded animals, victims of the constant conflict between big cats and humans. This cub was found lost in the bush. His mother and siblings were shot, and only he escaped the massacre. The experience has marked him deeply. He would soon have died had he not been rescued in time. For the moment, he lives in a small enclosure of 800 square meters, learning to adapt, albeit with difficulty, to life in captivity.
I'd say I don't think we have in Namibia, no.
For biologist Florian Wieser, for the time being, living in captivity is not a bad solution for the little cheetah.
The question is how you handle predators in captivity. It starts with the size of enclosure you provide them. The larger the enclosure, obviously, the less contact you will have with that predator, because they're naturally avoiding human contact. For ambassador animals that are orphaned, for example, or injured, human contact is often maintained to keep them in a tame or semi-tame state, and that will reduce stress because the animal will get habituated to that type of contact. In cases for releasable animals, you want to minimize human contact to a point where you don't actually have any contact with that animal, and you want to provide them with the largest possible area in captivity so they can still exercise their ecology as much as possible, although in a limited area, but also to not get habituated and to not experience stress.
Looking ahead, his future will take one of two possible paths: to live in captivity or to be reintroduced into the wild. The best outcome would be a return to the wild, but this could also be dangerous. Without preparation, family or companions, he might die of hunger, become easy prey for a leopard, or be shot by a hunter.
If animals come into the captivity, they're either injured, orphaned, or they're too old. So you have a problem that this animal will not survive in the wild. In that situation, we'll put them in captivity, and that animal will stay in captivity for the rest of their life. Those animals we will then use for filming, for tours, for people to see them, for educations at farmer get-togethers, just to educate people. But the main objective is try and rather put them back as soon as you can. Because if you keep them in a captivity too long, you overstep a line of, are they still scared of people? Remember, we are the biggest threat for them. So if they're not scared of us, somewhere down the line they're going to get shot because somebody will think this animal's got rabies, or it's going to catch my cattle or my sheep or my goats, and this animal will be killed.
Sometimes, to set an orphaned animal free too soon is to sign its death warrant. So life in captivity under the right conditions can be the best option if it is to survive.
She's 14 years old. Really? Yeah.
Biologist Stuart Munro shows us a 14-year-old cheetah that has spent many years in captivity and has an especially docile nature. Stuart feels a real sense of admiration for the cheetah, as did the ancient Egyptians, who managed to train them almost as if they were dogs.
So as far back as probably 400 or 500 BC, these cats were actually being tamed. This could be a part of their downfall because they're so easily tamed. They're also bred for specific colour patterns, which reduces the genetic variability. But the problem is the cheetah's genetics are at a critical point now, because about 10,000 years ago, at the last ice age, all the other species in the genus Acinonyx, which the cheetah belongs to, were wiped out. And the cheetah was the only one of that genus that actually survived. Because all the other cats are part of the Panthera genus. The lion is Panthera leo, the leopard is Panthera pardus. but these are not part of that cat family. They're a separate genetic line called, these are Acinonyx ubatus. They're different physically and morphologically as well. The claws do not fully retract like all the other cats. All the other cats, even your domestic cat, has a little white sheath inside that the claw retracts into. But these guys don't have that. That also helps them with their running. These are the fastest land animal on the planet, reaching speeds of over 100 kilometers an hour. And they will reach that in less than 3 seconds from a standing start. And their spine is hyper flexible in both directions. Because when it's running, it'll plant its front feet, and the back feet will actually go beyond the front feet, and the spine will be curved like that. There are other morphological traits that actually put them closer to dogs than cats. There's various internal differences in the structure of the nose and some of the internal organs that puts them quite close to dogs. So some people, although I'm not one of them, say that these are not true cats, that they're somewhere in between the true cat and the dog. But they are cats. They're just highly, highly adapted and highly evolved to what they do. They're built for speed, not power, not strength. They're designed to run fast, and that's it. They're streamlined. If you look at the tail, it's actually flattened along its length. And the tail acts as a rudder while they're running and turning. So for those high-speed turns, the tail actually helps them turn to follow the game.
Cheetahs are extraordinary creatures, but biological research shows that 10,000 years ago, they almost became extinct, probably due to competition with other more powerful predators or an epidemic. The species was saved thanks to a small group of survivors. This is why all cheetahs can be traced back to a single genetic line. It is worrying to think that a second and final extinction event could be caused by humans, the cheetah's new predator. There are still landscapes in Africa where the romantic, adventurous history of the continent has been preserved. Wildlife has an enormous potential to attract visitors and generate income for local people. Many small farms that once subsisted as livestock ranches have been converted into guest houses for tourists, who are drawn as much by the landscape as the wildlife. This has helped to prove the value of wild animals, including predators, as tourists are always keen to photograph them. The Nangus Foundation has established agreements with farmers to create sanctuaries open to tourists, where rescued big cats are rehabilitated, an initiative that brings benefits to all. One of these sanctuaries is home to a cheetah famous for having killed 30 head of livestock in only 3 years. He's a large male with a highly developed hunting instinct, who was the terror of local farms before he was taken alive. He's been named Spartacus after the legendary gladiator. Matt cleverly takes a group of visitors to see the notorious Spartacus and the other 3 cheetahs housed at the sanctuary. The ground spread over more than 5,000 hectares, surrounded by a security fence. Spartacus has eaten all the springboks that once populated the area, and Matt jokes that he'll have to import more so that Spartacus can get some exercise.
Yeah, springbok, yeah. They're getting a little lazy, the springbok. They need some more predators over there. When we get a cat that we want to release into the wild, we introduce it here first. It's called a soft release. And what that does is it allows the animal a chance to adapt to this environment before we release it into the wild. It's just like when you buy a little fish. You don't put it in the tank, you put it in a little bag, and you allow it to adapt before you release it into the tank. And so we're doing the same thing here. With other species like leopard, they're very hardy animals. You don't need to do this. But with cheetahs, we found that there was more successful releases when we introduced them into this boma before releasing them. And it's an amazing job. I love this. This is called radiotelemetry with my antenna and my receiver. And I'm gonna see where Spartacus is. He's one of our more aggressive cats. You hear that beep? So Spartacus is quite close. Oh, it's very close.
Very close.
Spartacus. Yeah. So you can see he's a very slim animal. That's how these guys are built. But Spartacus is especially big. You'll notice he's got a very large head. Now he'll calm down if I don't move, and he'll lay back down. But you can see he's got his tail tucked under like an angry dog.
Up close, he's an impressive sight. He's huge, covered in muscles, and weighs more than 90 kilos.
You can see he's very healthy. A neighboring farmer, and he killed over 25 calves. And just stay close together.
Most tourists who come to Africa are aware that wildlife numbers are falling, that there are fewer elephants, lions, leopards and cheetahs, and they believe African governments should take urgent action to save them. But there is only one way forward: to set up sanctuaries and reserves that are financed by tourism. Safaris generate income for local people and also help protect the animals. Outside reserves and parks, wildlife is in peril. For wild dogs, leopards, cheetahs and lions, the future looks even more uncertain. Over the last century, the pressures exerted by humans on big cats have been huge, even cruel. Wildlife seemed to be an inexhaustible natural resource, one whose value was unappreciated. It seems incomprehensible to us today that people killed big cats out of fear or ignorance. Now there is far more awareness both locally and globally of the value of nature, and efforts are underway to mitigate the eternal conflict between wild predators and humans. The cheetah is a symbol of this awareness, because its very existence is a lucky accident of evolution. To lose the cheetah would be a tragedy. It should continue its race for survival.